drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time, stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Welcome to the Crazy Life, everybody. My name's Jen, and I am, I guess, your hostess of the mostest. And with me, as always, is Bryan. Hey, Bryan.
Howdy.
Sorry for the rocky start, everybody. It is yet again a late night recording.
Yep.
Yeah. So I've been kind of stressing myself out. I'm on mandatory overtime now at my fabulous job. And so I'm working 45 to 48-ish hours a week, which to most people is not that big a deal. Mm-hmm. But for me, balance, as we've talked about in pretty much every episode, is pretty darn important in my life. And so it's really thrown me off balance, very much so, especially emotionally. Mm-hmm. And it's starting to really show. and yeah, especially at work. 2 incidents this week, not just one. I'm rocking hard, let me tell you. The last month I have broken down in my manager's office to the point of sobbing. Yeah, I'm really hitting home runs here, but it is what it is. And
let me ask you a quick question here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Have you talked to your therapist lately?
I have not.
Okay. I was just curious because
that is a logical decision, isn't it? A logical thought process.
It really isn't for a lot of people. A lot of people go, and especially when they're seeing a psychologist, where it's a come see me when you need me, versus a, like most people go to like their psychiatrist once a week or once every couple weeks or whatever it ends up being. So although, there are multiple types of psychologists as well, like the one I'm seeing is she's more of a regular visits kind. So
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, but, in the irony of you even bringing that up, because it never even crossed my mind. Wouldn't make sense to go to my doctors, but yeah, it didn't even cross my mind. And my fiance got really, really sick on Monday and Tuesday, had flu, cold type of a thing.
Right time of year, yep.
Yeah, and he's got a cough that's lingering, and I told him today that he needs to either go into his nurse's office at work or he needs to go to the doctor and get that checked out, because when something is lingering and consistent for quite a few days in a row, you need to check in with your doctor to make sure that there's nothing else going wrong. Right,
so they check your lungs and all that kind of stuff. Make sure you don't have some sort of an infection, something you can't fight on your own.
Exactly.
Yeah, because if it's a cold, they're pretty much going to say, because there isn't a lot they can do, but if it's an infection of some sort, that's when antibiotics or other things get involved. So
Right. Now, the irony of all this is the fact that until just this moment, when you've mentioned, have you reached out to your doctors yet?
Yeah.
It's never occurred to me. Yet it occurs to me when I see it in someone else having a chronic situation that they need to go to the doctor.
Right.
The first thing that pops in my head.
Something they're having trouble with coping, and that they
they have trouble overcoming something.
Right.
Granted, it is the difference between physical health and mental health. A lot of times we discount mental health
Yes.
Even when we are very well aware of it, it's very easy to discount it, and you don't think about it in that perspective. So yeah,
I will say this, like when
that's an eye opener. Yeah, go ahead.
In the couple times now that I've gone to my psychologist, I try to make mental notes of things that I want to discuss with her, which you should always do when you're going to see your doctor. That way you don't forget. You make sure that you don't walk out and go, oh man, I forgot and I don't do this, but I kind of am thinking I'm going to do this, is to keep some sort of like a journal that's just, these are things I want to talk about with the therapist, kind of a thing. Like, this was a really bad day and here's why, I think, or this was a good moment, or, whatever it happens to be. And, on my phone, I've got a program called Evernote, or I can just use notes, whatever, and just type up something real quick and throw it in there. It doesn't even have to be written down in a journal that you keep, kind of a thing. But anybody listening, that's a good idea in between your visits, to maybe keep a journal of stuff that you want to talk to the doctor about. And again, if you're going to go see the doctor about anything else, or if this is your first time going to see the doctor about mental health, sit down and write down everything you can think of. And again, don't leave their office until you've covered what you need to cover, till you are comfortable.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
To make sure you understand and you're comfortable. It doesn't make a darn bit of difference how busy they are.
Right.
They're there. You're paying them.
Well, that's why make sure, when you call to make your appointment, make sure you're calling and say, I need to talk to them about depression and even if you have to go and some other issues, because a lot of doctors' offices block you for about 15 minutes. If you tell them certain things, they sometimes will block you out for a little more. So that's why after a while you start getting, you get more rushed at the doctor's office, because they've blocked you for 15 minutes, or 20 minutes, or because there was one of the times I went into my doctor and they actually straight out told me that. They were like, oh, if we would have known for this, and you see dentist office do the same thing. If you're coming in for an evaluation or x-rays, they block you for about 15, 20-ish minutes. If you're going to have anything else done, they block you for an hour. Right. Kind of a range, so that there's plenty of time to, because you don't want to rush dental work. So,
absolutely.
But other doctors' offices seem to do the same thing. So be aware of that. So when you call and they say, what's the reason for the appointment? Tell them, I need to talk to them about, mental health, blah, blah, blah. And even if you have to, just say, I need a little bit of time, and see if they'll give you, so that you don't feel rushed. But don't let them let you feel rushed either. So. Right.
Take control of that situation.
Yeah. And I know it can be tough. Somebody with anxiety, it can be tough to speak up for yourself. But if you've come up with enough strength and can go in and talk to them in the first place to make that appointment, which is a really difficult step, you've got enough in you to stand up for yourself. Always, 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 always stand up for yourself, especially at the doctor's office. It's how you get the best results. Be forthcoming. And stand up for yourself. Don't let them walk on you. If they don't, if you don't want to do something, you tell them, I'm not gonna, that kind of thing. So,
I 100% agree. But and find the right doctors.
Yes.
Make sure.
Yeah. Sometimes doctors aren't the right fit.
Yeah. Don't just accept the first doctor you come across. If they don't feel right, and don't go to them. Go to another doctor and keep on trucking.
Right. Yeah, if you can. I know some places you don't have a lot of choices, but...
Right. Exactly.
We've talked about that.
But yeah, so that's been kind of my week. And it's interesting because I'm in quite the odd place with a lot of positive, wonderful things happening. And there's still that sticking point where I'm really struggling with work and stuff. So it's just this kind of interesting dichotomy happening in my life right now. So yeah, so I'm not quite sure. I mean, it's kind of getting me to back off from a lot of stuff and just say, okay, we got to go back to the basics. Deep breath, 1 moment at a time, 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, and just breaking it down, taking it slow, recognizing what I can change and accepting what I can't. And then also making sure I stay aware of where I'm at, what I'm doing, my mental state, and making sure I keep as much control as I can.
Yeah, because you don't want to feel regression.
Yes.
You know, you don't want to go, well, I've taken all these steps back, and then realize, like, well, what I actually did, in one way, it's like I needed to eliminate some stress, but at the same time, what I did was basically curl up in a ball.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you don't want to go that far, but you do, sometimes you need to, you know, lighten the load and not take on as much, but other times it's like you have to be careful that you're not just running away. You know,
exactly.
it's a tough line. It's a pretty tight line.
Well, it's interesting because this is the first time that my fiance's ever seen me in this position.
Yeah.
You know, and I told him when we went on mandatory overtime, I said, this is going to be difficult for me. Yeah. He's like, it's 5 hours. I'm like, I understand. I said, but you have to understand that even though I portray a normal person on the outside, you know, inside.
Well, if you take a scale and you weigh it evenly, and let's say you were balanced before, right?
Yeah.
And then you take a small amount of weight and, you know, on a small scale kind of a thing and put it on one side. And I'm talking about the scales where you put the weights on the two sides to even them out, not like a digital one. But, you know, you do that, and what's going to happen is even if it's a small amount of weight, you're going to see a shift, you know? And it's like, see that and now multiply that toward life, you know? It's like that shows you how even 5 hours, which like you said, it's like, well, it's an hour a day. Who cares? It's not, you know, because to the quote-unquote normal person, 5 hours, it sucks. That's all there is to it. It just sucks.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but you don't understand that when you're fighting for balance on a daily basis, that 1 hour, it's like, well, where do I make up for it?
Right.
Because that's an extra hour of stress. How do I decompress for another hour when I don't get one more hour in the day? I need to decompress this somewhere through the week. I need to decompress this, you know, and even if maybe it becomes you know, when you're just sitting around watching TV, maybe you go, well, I need to get 5 or 10 minutes of meditation or something, you know, like each person has their own coping mechanisms, but, you know, it's like, that's the problem is when you shift things one way, it's like, you know, it's like having money in both of your hands, and it's like someone's like, well, can I borrow $5? And you're like, sure, and you give them $5, and you're like, wow, I have no money in this hand, and now I kind of need that money. You can't just take it from the other hand because then that hand needs the money, you know, kind of a thing. It's like there's no.
Where do I borrow this from?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Where do you borrow the balance from? And that's a really difficult thing, even though it's only an hour. It can be very difficult for some people.
And so I sat him down and I explained to him. I said, well, here's what you're going to start seeing. I said, you're going to start seeing me talking less, me drawing more inside myself, sleeping more, and just wanting to, you know, basically curl up, like you said.
Yeah.
I said, you know, you're going to start seeing me almost physically start pulling away inside myself and kind of curling up.
Really, going back like the week I did the podcasts.
Yeah.
It was 5 podcasts, and again, if you look at the time frame of most of the ones I did, they were about an hour and a half. Well, each one of those that I pushed myself that hour and a half, by the end of the week became 7-8 hours. And again, it doesn't seem like a lot, especially with me not working and such. It seems like that, well, that's no big deal. Hell, I worked those hours today, kind of a thing. But to me, that's a huge thing. And like I said, it took me the better part of the next week to balance that back out. And I went the opposite. I did the same thing. I went too far, basically, but I kind of had to in order to pull that balance back up, you know. So what you're saying fits right in line with what I had said, too. So, you know.
And it was interesting seeing his progression through it.
Yeah.
Because I sat him down. I told him what to expect.
Right. The rule. Well, you know, this goes back to great point. Like when Henno was on, the rules changed. You went to your support system and said, "Hey, the rules are changing. Here's the new rules."
Yep. I said, "This is what this is what you're going to see from me." Yep. So you know, when you see it, you're not surprised. You know, this is the changes you're going to start seeing, and within like 2-3 days, he started seeing those changes.
Sure, yeah.
And, you know, and all of a sudden I started getting phone calls, you know, because he works a hard labor job. And so when he gets breaks and stuff, he used to call me when he was on his break to kind of catch up with me and stuff. And he hasn't been recently, just, you know, been busy and whatever, no biggie. And I started getting some phone calls around, you know, 5:30, 6 o'clock, just to check in, see how I was doing, you know. And it's like he's starting to see, he's like, oh, okay, this is something that's real.
Yes.
You know,
and that's the thing, because most people don't get to see how this is real to people, because you can't tangibly hand someone, you know, you can't hand them something. That's why I said with the scale thing, that's the best way I can make it tangible to somebody, is go, here's my life normally. Like if I'm balanced, which generally on any given day I'm probably not. I'm probably pretty severely one way, and then I'd add more to it, you know. But even if assuming that there's balance, then now see that shift. That's me. That's what's happening inside my head, you know, and it's hard to recover from that. So, yeah,
and it is, especially when you're under a lot of stress and you're feeling very frustrated, and you don't have an outlet for that frustration. It's really hard to maintain balance, and it's thrown me off, and now I'm trying to figure out a new balance.
Yeah.
And add to that, I'm having issues with finding a venue that fits my needs and my wants for my wedding next year. And every time you have to call or send an email, and then you get the email back and it's a rejection.
Yeah.
There's no openings, or it's too expensive, and you know, and it's very difficult to get a venue within a year of, which is stupid, but it's very difficult to get a venue within a year. You usually have to go out a year and a half at least. And so, you know, I'm getting hit with a lot of they're just surprised. No, not really surprised. I can't think of the right word I want to use. But it's almost, they're like kind of half laughing at you.
Yeah.
Attempt it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
They're not being mean. They're not trying to be mean. They're just like, oh, good luck. You know, that type of stuff. And you're like, dude, really, that's not what I need to hear right now.
And they're like, yeah, I'm the other 40 people we've talked to today have also said that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's just like, oh, okay. So, you know, and granted, in the scheme of things, that's not that big a deal. And it's just, none of this is in the scheme of things when you take perspective and you really look at this.
But at the same time, using the scale example I gave, it is.
It just is. It's such a big deal in my head. Yep.
That's why, you know, like I said before, when I told somebody that depression was like putting a bunch of like the plates you use for like weightlifting that you would use for like the, you know, bench press, like just taking those plates and putting them on your shoulders. And I was like, no matter what the stress is, it's most of the time feels equal on your shoulders when you're depressed. So now try to stand up, you know, with like 800 pounds of these things on you. It's very difficult to do that and go do anything. Now, if I can eliminate this one and this one and this, you know, now I'm down to maybe 400 pounds, and, you know, it's still going to be really hard, but a person might be able to shoulder 300 or 400 pounds. It's still going to be really tough, but if I can get that down to 200 pounds, now maybe I can move, you know what I mean? It's like each time I move a plate, it makes a significant difference, no matter if it's something tiny or if it's something, like just calling and making an appointment can feel just as stressful as what should be a huge thing.
Exactly.
You know, like, you know, like just calling and making a doctor's appointment, you know, can be like, just, like you can lay there and dread it.
Immovable object.
Yeah, basically. So, yeah,
So it's been very, very interesting, and I think in a very good way, you know, and I'm really working hard on the forgiving myself. When I'm losing my cool and I'm crying more again.
Yeah.
So I'm really having to come to terms with that is me.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be me.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, that is my reaction to things, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't need to apologize for that.
Right.
And it's very difficult, but it's something that I'm actively taking part in.
Yeah.
Is trying to reframe my mental thoughts on it.
Again, the rules have changed. Now you're letting yourself, who is also part of your support system, you're letting yourself know that the rules have changed and that these are the new rules. So, you know, it's, excuse me, it sounds really silly. It's like the giving yourself a hug concept. You know, it sounds ridiculous, but realistically what you'll find is people dealing with mental health stuff tend to use really ridiculous methods because what are considered normal don't work. So you have, again, you know, my to-do lists with clean clothes, shower, get out of bed. Again, you know, to most people that seems insane, but it isn't to me. I was listening to a podcast this past week. Actually, I was watching it because they do a live broadcast. It was one I was on about a month or so ago, Beyond the 140. And the guy that they were talking to said he still has a newspaper subscription because he lives in an apartment building. Well, to get the paper, he has to physically get up and go downstairs to get the newspaper.
Right.
And he suffers from depression. That's his way of getting out of bed. And he's like, and I'm not a just get up and go in whatever I'm in. I always put on fresh clothes because I'm going out in public. And he's like, that's how I get past that. And I'm like, see, that it sounds ridiculous when you really think about it, but it's not. And when as soon as he said it, I was like, that's a great mechanism for you. You know, it won't work for everybody, but that's a great one. Remember, like the place that I used to live, I used to try to go get the mail every day, and our mail wasn't like at the end of even if it's at the end of the driveway, but my mail was like you had to go down and go, what was it, about 3 houses down basically to where the mailbox was. So I would try to go every day to get the mail because it got me up, out of bed. And again, I'm not a go in my pajamas kind of person. I'm putting on fresh clothes, and it gets me outside. You know, so it kind of, and again, it sounds silly because most people are like, big deal, I get the mail every day, you know?
Right.
And it's like, exactly, I can't, you know?
Right. It's things that you recognize in yourself and you accept, and you have to accept it, and you're like, okay, I can accept that this is part of who I am.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I necessarily like it.
No.
I can accept it, but I don't have to like it.
But if it's something you don't like, then you work to make the change on that, if you can. Yeah.
So how can I work with it to make it something that I do like?
Yes.
You know, so unless I'm going to become a theater major and cry on stage on cue.
Yeah, they just bring you in when they need someone to cry, basically.
Right. Like, and go.
Like you're credited as always like background crier.
Right. So, but the human resource manager and I were talking, and she made a very good point. She's like, why do you see everything as a personal attack? Mm-hmm. And she's like, just because someone is saying that something's wrong in the department, that doesn't mean you're wrong.
Yeah.
It just means that the department's wrong.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm like, but I'm part of the department.
Yeah.
And it's directly affecting my work. And and she's like, but that's not a criticism of your work. It's a criticism of the department. And it's like, I get the distinction.
Yeah, she's trying to make it to where you look at the department as the bad guy, not yourself, essentially. I'm just using bad guy as a descriptor.
Exactly.
But
so, you know, it's not so a flaw in my work.
Right.
It's a flaw in how the work is being, you know,
right. Well, and that's the thing is it may not be a flaw in your work. It may be a flaw in the process that was laid out that you do because that's your job. Yeah.
And I get that, but where it really it hits me, and that's what I told her. I said the reason it gets so frustrating is that I am incredibly industrious and very focused and have a really strong drive to do things the right way, the best way.
Yep, I'm the same way. Yep.
Yeah.
You put your name on it. That's why you take it personally.
I do.
Yeah.
And I'm very involved in what I do.
Yes. And when the process feels flawed, you are a person that actively try to change it to correct it.
Exactly.
And I understand. It's like you buy in with loyalty, essentially, and then when someone attacks that, you feel like they're attacking. It's like someone attacking your spouse.
Yes.
You know, it's like...
Or your child.
Right. They're not attacking you, but it's like, well, that I made the choice that, like, I picked that person, so you're kind of attacking me. Or like with the kid, it's like, well, I raised them, so you're attacking. And it's like, no, I'm not. You know, like, I'm just attacking, you know, whatever. Or not even attacking. I'm criticizing. And yeah.
So it is tough. But when she said that, and she's like, you know, there are a lot of positive things that are happening around you. You're just not seeing them.
Right. Which is honestly something you have said to me I don't know how many times. You know, you've said those same things because I'll be like, why can't something just go my way? And you're like, you're missing all this stuff. You know, and like I remember, I think it was before we did the show last week, I was talking to you about how I described depression to somebody as like that. It's like picking a scab.
Yes.
And you get so obsessed with that scab that you don't realize that the rest of you, and you brought up another great point, would be like a zit. Like somebody gets a zit, and that's all you can focus on is that zit. You might be gorgeous, but you have a big old zit on your forehead or something, and that's all you can see. You see a zit with a face behind it. Same with the scab. You get so obsessed with that, and it's like, God, I don't want that. I want to get rid of that. And it's, you know, you pick that scab, and you keep picking that scab, and even as it heals, you pick it some more. And that's what depression kind of becomes, because you really are. You just keep picking it yourself, and you don't see that the rest of you is fine, but all you can look at is that one or multiple things, whatever it happens to be. And I think it's that same thing with this. You just keep picking that scab, you know, and it's like, it's tough to not do that.
Right.
You know?
And that was kind of, again, a reminder. And it's amazing how some things like that just get mirrored back at you in your life. You know, and things that I say on the podcast. And, you know, if you haven't realized it already, folks, I'm really great with ideas and having them come out of my mouth. Not really necessarily all that good at application at times.
I'm a thinker, not a doer. Like, I'm saying that as myself. I am a thinker, not a doer.
Yeah, because I feel the same way about myself.
And if you listen to my other show, Salty Language, you'll realize that in tenfold, because Tony and I are always like, you know what we should do? We should do this. And most of it is nonsense. But occasionally stuff comes out of our mouths that's like, that's actually a really good idea. And yet we never, or hardly ever, act on it. We're so bad. Yeah.
But occasionally in life, your words will get mirrored back at you in such a way that you have to stop and go, huh.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's like, I just told people to do the exact same thing.
Well, again, the reason with me in therapy, I was like, I'm sitting here on this show, and I'm like, go get help, and I'm not going to get help. It's like, I'm sitting here being a giant hypocrite. So, you know, now I can at least cross that off the list for my hypocrisy list.
Right. Oh my gosh, someone called me a hypocrite, you know, before in my life, and my answer was always yes. You know, they're like, oh my God, you're so hypocritical. I'm like, I guess by the definition, yes.
Yeah, we almost all are. Yeah.
Right. I kind of consider it more like I'm a growing, changing individual.
Right.
And I can change my mind at a drop of a hat because it's based upon knowledge that I learn in between point A and
exactly.
point B.
Yeah.
So
I remember telling somebody once that I was like, you know, they call me a hypocrite, and I was like, you're right. And I was like, but at the same time, I was like, if you're not a hypocrite, you're not an evolving person.
Right, absolutely.
Because, you know, changing your mind, or in politics, as they like to call it, flip-flopping or whatever, it's like, no, you can have thought process A, and when someone brings it to you, a good argument, and you think on it and go, you know, that actually makes, and you change your mind, that's not flip-flopping. That is simply, now granted, in politics, most of the time it's just doing it for popularity's sake.
Sure.
But people do it all the time, and it doesn't make you wishy-washy or any cute little term you want to, it's just, you can just have your mind changed, because sometimes things are presented to you and you're like, that's, I mean,
I didn't think about it in that way.
How many people
makes
were,
more sense now.
Yeah, how many people were okay with the world when African Americans had to go to the back door to get food and stuff from a restaurant or drink at separate water fountains? And then somebody was like, hey, this is terrible. Why are we doing this? And then people started thinking on it, and, I'd like to think most people have come around on that and gone, that was a really dumb way of thinking. That doesn't make them wishy-washy flip-floppers. It doesn't make them anything but evolving humans and better people. That's what it makes them. Now, changing your mind doesn't always make you a better person.
Right.
But at least you've evolved, you've changed, you've evolved, and that's what we are. So many elements of us as people are fluid,
Yes.
And it's like, quit trying to pin me down as one thing, because none of us are. Aside from we're people, that's the only,
Yeah.
Other than that, it's like, stop trying to, pigeonhole everybody.
Yeah. Because it's just, we pigeonhole each other so that it's easier for us to understand.
Well, and hell, I mean, we pigeonhole ourselves.
Exactly.
At times.
It makes life easier if you compartmentalize, you can pigeonhole, and you're like, okay, you belong here, and you belong here, and you belong here. Great. And nice and organized. And
it's easy to label people. Yeah.
Yeah, you label them, you put them away, you're good. And so often we lose the beauty of the individuality of people and their abilities to change and grow. And that's what makes them amazing. So instead of labeling, we just need to accept. We don't have to understand, we have to accept.
Yeah.
Two very different things.
Yeah.
And that was a real kind of lesson that was delivered to me yesterday, and it's taken me a good portion of today to kind of process through it.
Well, it will sometimes, sometimes something's kind of pointed out to you and you're like, that makes a lot. Hell, it's funny how, like this last time I was in, at the psychologist, like just talking with her, and I found myself, and I was telling Clint from Geek Dig podcast this the other night, that I found it amazing that I'm talking with her, and I find that I'm talk, and then I stop, and I'm waiting for, I'm giving her space to talk, because that's what podcasting is.
Right.
You talk, and then, especially like with the way like we do it, and like Tony and I do on Salty Language, we can see each other on Skype, so you can kind of see that the other person wants to say something, so you can kind of back off and let them talk. And I'm sitting there, and I'm talking with her, and I say something, and I stop, and she's just like sitting there like, go on, and I'm like, oh, and then I just keep talking, it's like, no, her point is to, she's supposed to, like, that's supposed to be all about you, you're supposed to talk, that's the point of it, and then you discuss whatever, but even with that, like, I came to, it's funny doing that, how I will talk myself into moments of clarity.
Exactly.
And I was sitting there and I was talking about going to Tony's cabin with him and Jeannie, his wife, and then a couple one of our other friends went, and then her husband joined us the next day. And I was like, I was uncomfortable for that time a little bit there because... And then I realized why I was so uncomfortable. It wasn't obviously part of it's not being at home. That's, so that changes my comfort zone. There was no Wi-Fi, which I know sounds ridiculous, but it's part of my comfort zone because I use social media as a comfort zone, essentially. So, but what I figured out actually, because as we were talking, she's like, well, why? Why do you think, And she's like, these are friends you hang out with regularly, right? And I'm like, and I was like, well, yeah. I was like, our friend T's usually there, and him and I pair off and blah. And then it hit me, T's part of my comfort zone. And T wasn't there. So when Don showed up, him and Renee are a couple, Tony and Jeannie are a couple, I'm by myself. Had T been there, I pair with T, basically, because he's my ride to various things we go hang out at, or when we're going to Beer Fest, him and I'll have a room, and Tony and Jeannie, so they have some privacy, kind of a thing. Like, that's how we pair off. And I was like, that's what it was. T's almost always there, and he wasn't this time, so I didn't have the person I pair off with, my comfort zone, basically.
Your non-sexual life partner.
Yeah. And it's funny because, in a lot of ways, Tony's that way, but Tony pairs off with his wife. So it's,
Yeah, when his wife's there, then,
so
he's
when
not your partner
right,
anymore.
exactly.
Yeah.
So when T's there, it makes it easier because T and I will, it's not that they do anything to alienate me. Nobody did. Everybody, whatever. It's just funny how you just feel that comfort, and it's, even though it wasn't really necessary, it was just that was there. And I kind of hit that, and I was like, I didn't even think about that, but that makes so much sense that he wasn't there, and I felt less comfortable than I normally kind of would, because I had my own room. Everything, I couldn't have been more comfortable as far as it's with people I know well. I'm comfortable with those people.
It's a place you've been multiple times.
Yeah.
The surroundings are comfortable. The people are comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of your hierarchy needs are met.
Yeah. And it's why I said it's so funny how you can look at it and go, well, aside from not being home, you're still hitting a lot of the notes on, being in a comfort zone. But one major one was that T is always there. And we're all creatures of habit. So, it changed the dynamic, kind of. And
sure.
I think that had something to do with it. Yeah. Like I said, it's nothing against any of the other people. It was just kind of weird how...
Yeah.
And then I thought about it at other times when we've gone out and he hasn't been there. And how I think about it, how I always find myself going... I miss T. Damn it, why isn't he here? Kind of a thing. And it's I'm thinking more about that. And it's that's funny because it really is,
Yeah.
and it's not it's not even one of those where I'm I didn't realize T and I were that good of friends. I've known that. We've been pretty good friends for a long time. So
sure.
It's just... It's funny, like I said, how you can kind of talk yourself into that moment of clarity.
Exactly.
And then, when I stopped, I kind of came to that, and she was like, that makes a lot of sense. She's like, that makes tons of sense. And I was like, huh. It's just funny because I'm like, me, in my head, I'm going, why am I paying, why is someone paying you for this visit? I could do this on my own.
Right. It is amazing how... I think moments of clarity, and it's so funny because this is not our intended topic, folks. And just kind of stumble onto it.
Yeah, we'll get to it in a minute here.
Well, but I'm thinking this might be our topic.
Okay, that's fine too. Whatever.
Because I like moments of clarity.
Yeah.
Because it's something we've both experienced this week, and in different ways.
Well, I have been over the last few weeks, especially. I feel like I'm thinking about things in a different way. In general, I guess. I don't know. You know what I honestly think it is
your perspective switching?
I think there's it's one of those times that when I think about things and I feel like there's hope involved, I'm a very different thinker. When I feel like there's no hope, essentially, I'm very much a defeatist at that point. Me
too.
And if I see a little, even if it's I don't know if it'll happen, I'm really not going to get my hopes all up about it, but it's there's a little glimmer somewhere. I'm a little more okay, let's, like I said, it changes how I approach and look at things, so.
And you're feeling like the psychologist is really helping you feel a little hopeful?
Not necessarily. I've only gone a couple of times, so it's helpful because, like I told her, she asked me, how often I want to come in, kind of a thing, and I this time again I was just I don't know because I don't know what I'm supposed to be getting out of this, kind of I tried to go in with really low expectations, meaning that I just had none. Not that I didn't expect anything, but it was not that I didn't expect results. That And I was like, but I like coming in here because even though I can talk, and I told Jeannie this the other night, and I was like, even though I can talk to people in my support system, I project onto them that there still can be an element of judgment. I go into her, and it's clinical. You know what I mean? I know she's there to listen to me, to help me get health-wise, to get better. to overcome these hurdles.
And if she thinks you're a freak, it doesn't affect any other part of your life.
Exactly.
But if somebody in your support zone or someone you see on a regular basis thinks you're a freak, then that can change the dynamics of your life.
I'll be honest, I've already in 2 visits to her told her stuff that probably 2 people in my life know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. Because it sucks having to feel like you need to keep things to yourself. Like elements of yourself. Like
absolutely
dark thoughts. Stuff like, because nobody wants to hear your dark thoughts. You know what I mean? Like how many times I've thought of that things would be better off without me, kind of a thing. No one wants to hear you talk about that. Doesn't matter who you are. No one wants to hear you. Like, will they? Yeah, people will listen to you talk about it, but nobody wants to. And if you don't believe me, start talking to somebody about it and see how quick they try to turn it positive. Rather than understand that what you need is for them to just let you get it out. This goes back to, there's an episode of a TV show called Everybody Hates Chris, right? And there's an episode of the show where the wife comes home and she's complaining about her day at work, and the husband is trying to do his best to make her feel better. His intent is from a good place. But what he's not doing is actually just listening to her. And that's all she really wants, is for him to just shut up, listen, and basically at some point go, you're right, she's a horrible person. Basically, you know, that's all she needs from him. He's trying, but he's instead making arguments and this and that. Not fighting her, but just, you know, well, you should do this.
Trying to help her.
Yeah, he's trying to give her advice and trying to turn the perspective. Yes. And that isn't what she needs. And that's what tends to happen if you start just, hey, I feel this way. It really sucks. I know it. And you just keep talking about it. People at some point, they don't want to be brought down, which is understandable, but they don't understand how important it is for you to not hold that in. I can tell a therapist this stuff. Their job is to hear this stuff. They've been trained to hear this stuff, and then to help you change your perspective. You know, kind of a thing. That's like the difference.
Giving the bellhop your bags versus looking at the person next to you and saying, "Can you carry my bags?"
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's the thing. Really, you are asking someone to carry your baggage. You know, and the difference is that your friends are gonna have a harder time doing it sometimes than this other, and that's why, you know, the therapist can be such an important part of the support team, because they offer something that no one else in your life offers. You know, even no matter how much you love, trust, are strongly bonded with your spouse or a parent or a brother or a best friend, it's not the same feeling. And for me, it was so freeing to sit in there and just dump. You know, and just know that, you know, what I say stays there. I can say whatever I want without any fear of repercussions, essentially. You know, I mean, within reason. Don't get me wrong. There are certain legal things if I were to say, she would have to notify people. But anyway, you know.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about her going and telling somebody that you said that they're a douche.
Yeah. Now, granted, she could, but I probably won't know them.
Exactly.
So it's not that big a deal.
You don't have to worry about it coming back to bite you.
Right. Because even as much as I use social media as a dump, there's a lot of times I'll type something and then delete it because real life people follow me. And it's like, I don't, either they'll think it's about them or I don't want this or that kind of a thing, so I'll avoid it.
Yeah, the tone be misconstrued.
Right, which is where, you know, having an actual journal is better than a blog. Because in a journal, or a private blog, I guess, it would be the same thing, where everything stays with you. And you can destroy that at any point that you don't want that to exist anymore, you know?
But sometimes it's even, like I was mentioning earlier about something being mirrored back at you.
Yeah.
I think that's really important in many ways, because I think self-actualization, can't say the word right, so I apologize, and those aha moments that we get, they come from a variety of places. You know, my situation, someone mirrored some words back at me that I had just recently used, and it caused that, light bulb. I mean, in your case, you, just by having that blank slate, that basically the board to bounce your words off of, you were able to hear those words and work your way around to an aha moment.
Do you know what it's funny because, and anyone who listens to this, if you know me in real life, don't take this the wrong way, please. It was nice to have someone that I'm talking to that I don't feel like is looking at me going, I feel so sorry for you.
Oh, I'm sure that's very freeing.
Even though I know she does, because you can tell with what she says to me later, where she's, when I'm like, this is awful, and she's like, I imagine it is, you know, and blah, blah, you know, because she doesn't deal with it, but she deals with it for other people, or with other people, I should say.
Yeah.
You know, so, like I said, it's so freeing to not have someone looking at you with pity.
Judgment.
With pity. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I said, as much as I love my support system, I don't think it's possible to have that outside of that environment. I think you have to have someone who's a complete stranger to have that. And so, anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, but I that's exactly it. I mean, I think that's why podcasting is such an amazing medium. Yeah. Because you're talking to strangers. Yeah. You know, essentially. A lot of the strangers become friends through, you know, a variety of ways and stuff like that. Yeah. But initially, you're just putting your words and your thoughts out there into the universe. You're just throwing it out there in the universe. And it's so fascinating what bounces back to you. Yeah. You know, and just by hearing it again or seeing it again or, you know, just listening to yourself in a different way, all of a sudden these things you're like, oh, wait, okay, yeah, that's right. That makes sense. Or I had forgotten that. Or, wow, I didn't look at it that way. And it's so fascinating. And I think every time we do that is a spark of what you were mentioning earlier, that hope or that happiness. Because it is a pure moment of happiness. Yeah. When you get that realization, and even if it's almost a negative realization, it's still that aha moment.
Yeah, because you could have an aha moment and go, what an idiot I've been.
Exactly. Like, wow, that was a really big jerk move. Right. You know? Yeah. But it's still, you're happy, not because you were a jerk, but you're happy because you're like, I get it.
Right. Well, if nothing else, you can go, I'm happy I recognized it, so I cannot do it again.
Exactly. You're like, light bulb, great.
Because I don't want to be. Yeah, exactly.
You know, I can go back and I can, you know, take action or I can change things. Because nothing's worse than that feeling right before that. I mean, I guess to use a very overused expression, it's the darkness before the dawn. Mm-hmm. You know, you're so confused. You're in such a dark place. You're like, God, this is bothering me, and I can't figure out what's going on, and you have all this stuff swirling around, and through whatever medium it comes back to you, this something just like hits you in the face, and you get that aha moment. It's like almost that,
it's almost like you're spinning around. You're physically spinning around in a circle, and sometimes someone will just stop you. Yeah, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, you know, I can actually see forward now rather than a blur of things, you know. Exactly. Like somebody just spinning you in a chair or something, and you're like, I can't, you know, and then they stop you, and you're like, all right, now I can get my bearings. I can put my feet on the floor. Yeah. You know, snap back to reality at that point, and, you know.
Back to reality.
Oh, see, I had Eminem going in my head, but
there you go. See, you know, that's
because Lose Yourself was the,
But it's just, you know, and our original topic today was going to be happy-ish and happy, and we kind of circled back to it in some ways.
I still think that should be a full show, though, because
it will, and it will. We'll do a whole show on that. But when we stumbled onto this, just in our discussion and our talk, it seemed to be very poignant and something that really resonated with me.
I always because I like when our shows are this way. Like, it's nice to have kind of talking points and all that, but it's nice when we're kind of talking and it's like, well, let's just go into this and we did it last week a little bit with sadness, too. I mean, even though we kind of planned to talk about it, it was, we kind of really got more into it, I think, than we were intending to. And, you know, same with this. It's just, you know, it's funny how, like you said, just I don't know, just having those moments, it makes you feel like you've grown, you know, because you see that either you see a need for change or you see that you have changed generally by one of, or, you know, something like, or, you know, or like, you know, me with tea, it's like, you know, seeing that as part of my comfort zone. And it's like, well, if nothing else, like that could not change. I could go back up there, say in a week or two, let's say, with the same people I went with, but at least this time I can go in my head, well, this is why you feel that way. And it's a calming effect when I, like somebody like me, I need to understand things. That's the easiest way for me to calm down, is when I can understand, right. You know, no, I'm not saying that's the basis for all of my anxiety, but there is a lot, you know, like when I go to the doctors and they're like, well, it's this, I ask questions because I want to know a good mainly what I'm finding out from them are, a lot of times I'll go to the doctor, they'll tell me whatever, I'll go home, I'll take their terms and I'll research, and so that I can further understand, you know, like, you know, I it's funny how when I was at, you know, again, I'm at the therapist and I'm talking to her about anxiety and stuff, and she started talking to me about breathing techniques. And I was like, you know, somebody told me about that years ago, and I've been using them ever since. And it's hard sometimes. Like sometimes if you feel it coming on, the anxiety, it's easier to get ahead of it with breathing. Once you're really mired in it, it's hard to even use breathing as an escape technique. But it's there. It's a good, very good tool that we've recommended plenty of times on here, where you focus on your breathing. You know, really focus on the breath coming in, the breath going back out. If you have to, take it even further. Picture in your, you know, when you close your eyes, picture your lungs contracting and expanding. You know, your ab muscles. You know, whatever you have to do to really. It's kind of half meditation, half breathing, and that breathing will help calm you back down. You know, and
ground you.
Right, and you know, my therapist was explaining how the adrenal process works through that process to me. And see, for me, I'm eating it up because I love hearing and understanding why things work. I always have. It almost doesn't matter what it is. I want to know why it ticks.
That's the control in you.
Right. Well, somebody asked me one time what character on Heroes I would be, and I always said Siler because he's the one that wants to see how all the mechanics work in someone's head. And it's like, you know, he also is, you know, spoilers, a serial killer on the show. But, whatever.
Well, I mean, the more you understand, the more in control you feel.
I'm comfortable because I understand. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
You feel like everything's compartmentalized. They're in their place.
Yes.
And it's organized. And so you can be in control more.
Yep.
And that feeling of uncomfortableness is that feeling of not being able to control.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not controlling people, it's not controlling anything else.
Right.
Not even controlling your environment. It's the feeling of, I don't understand, so it's scary and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
When I understand something and I can put it in black and white and I can say, okay, this makes sense. I've done it. Boom, and you can move past it.
It's why it was funny because, you know, talking with that, and then she started talking about, like, even if you have to, like, focus on your hands, a lot of people will just open and close, stretch their hand and focus on that because it's twofold. One is it distracts you. It gets your mind off of whatever is making you anxious generally. That's the first thing it does. And the second thing is, again, it helps you see things as tangible. It's real. This is real. I'm watching my hands. That is real. Worrying and whatnot, that's not real. That's a fabrication, you know.
Yes.
And when she was telling me about the hands, I was like, so that's similar to like a grounding technique then, where, you know, a lot of people that have PTSD nightmares and stuff, one of the techniques they use is grounding, which is you sit up in bed, put your feet on the floor so you can feel an actual connection, grab or sometimes hold things with good memories or good thoughts. Those kind of things to kind of put you back where you are. Like stare at a painting on your wall or whatever, you know, so that you go, this is my bedroom. This is not the awful dreams and stuff that I was having. This is my bedroom, basically. And, you know, again, it sounds like something you would tell a child because it sounds like grab your teddy bear, you know, kind of a thing. But it's not. It's adults have to do this sometimes because you have to bring yourself back to reality.
And it is an amazing technique.
Yeah.
That we learn as children.
Yes.
But for some reason,
we forget it.
We've classified it as a kiddie thing.
Yep.
And that's not the case.
No.
I recommend...
It's amazing how many things as kids that are comforting people use as adults and don't think about that. Or, you know, like a lot of people will turn a nightlight on and go, well, I do it so I can see. It's like, is it?
Right.
Is it so you can see in the dark? Or deep down, I mean... Are you still kind of afraid of the dark? Which is fine. It's just, you know, I kind of wonder at times.
Well, I always tell people, because I work in customer service, and I've worked in customer service for many, many, many years. Mm-hmm. And something I always tell someone when they're fairly new coming in, I'm like, you must get, a bobblehead, a picture of loved ones, your favorite place, whatever it is.
It's the Homer Simpson picture of Maggie.
Exactly.
From the episode where he has to go crawling back for his job, and they have a thing that says, you're here forever or whatever, and Homer blocks it out with pictures of Maggie and says, you know, I forgot exactly how it's worded, but it's like, you're doing it for her, basically.
Yep.
It kind of a thing, and that's his, you know,
and that's
his moment.
Because bobbleheads are great. Yeah. Because you just tap them, and they have a tendency to make you smile anyway.
Right.
And you can kind of breathe with the little head, and you can nod your head back and forth, and it just gives you that moment of like that break, that rest to kind of reset yourself a bit, and then kind of go back at it and stuff.
I'll tell you another great one I saw the other day, and I've seen it before, was in Japan. I don't know if they're available here, but in Japan they make phone cases that have basically what mimics bubble wrap on the back.
Nice.
And they pop back up. So you can use it over and over and over as a stress reliever. And I was like, and I've read countless times that people get such an endorphin rush from using bubble wrap that seems like a great idea for somebody with anxiety, like a stress ball concept. Yep. It's you just sit there and you get distracted with the bubble wrap, but then you're like, oh, I feel better, and you can go back to what you were doing.
And squeaky toys, I've heard people use squeaky toys, or like a squeaky ball, where it bounce off the ground and it makes it a little, you know.
Now, the problem with those, the last two things, is you have to go outside or something.
Right,
but yeah.
You can't be distracting, especially at work.
Although it would be kind of funny. You just hear this, you know, squeaking at someone's desk, and you're like, what the?
I mean, there's people that like baseballs. Mm-hmm. I've seen people do it with baseballs.
You've seen me do it with baseballs.
Yeah.
Where I grab it, and I actually, I remember growing up, there was a company called, it was the company's name was Score, but they had a brand of baseball cards called Pinnacle, and they did a series which was showing pitchers and how they hold the ball for different pitches. And I had all of them. And I used to sit and I would take a baseball and I would practice holding the different ways to hold for a cutter or a two-seamer or, you know, a circle change that Greg Maddux had, or different, you know, and I still do it. I do it with apples now. Like, I'll hold one in my hand, and you'll see me move my fingers to where it's a two-seam fastball. I'll move for a three-seam. I usually will switch into the circle change. I just do it out of habit. I do it all the time.
Or the toss up in the air and catch.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one guy that was, because we were in cubicles, and so I would be at my desk, and I'd hear slap, slap, slap. and if I'd look up, sure enough, to see the baseball go in the air, come back, you know, it you know, goes behind the desk, so I can't see it.
Right.
Then it goes back up, and then goes behind the desk, you know. So I know exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
You know.
But yeah, there's all sorts of stuff like that, you know, like you said, or these Funko Pops that are out now that are of like mostly, well, they're all sorts of things now. They started out as like comic characters, but they're little vinyl. Some of them are bobbleheads, but a lot of them aren't. Most of them aren't, actually. You know, they're a couple inches, what are they, 5 inches or 6 inches tall?
Yeah.
And you know, they're cartoony looking. I could see people using those.
Silly, they make you smile.
Yeah. Or putting up stuff from a sports team or whatever. That's a lot of people do that stuff. It's, you know, again, it brings part of your comfort zone to work. Mm-hmm. You know, because that's, you know, you're a huge blank fan. So you bring in pictures of, you know, whether it's sports memorabilia or, you know, like we said, or any of that stuff we just said. And yet it also provides a distraction from you know, when you're having a negative mood or a bad day or anxiety or just whatever it is, you know, because you can't, you know, it's hard to deal with that stuff when you have to, or, you know, you're on the phone with a customer and you have to deal with that anxiety because they're just being impossible. And you can't yell, you can't slam the phone down, you can't do any of that stuff. So it's like, you know, you can sit there and squeeze a stress ball all day, though, you know, while you're on the phone, you know, because that's nice and quiet.
I will say the worst customers are not the ones that are yelling at you. Yeah. The worst ones are the ones that are just sad or upset.
Yeah.
And they're not mad and yelling. They're more they've accepted that this sucks.
Yeah.
And
they're disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like your parents. It's not when they're screaming at you that it's the worst. It's when they're like, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. And it's like a knife right in the chest, you know?
I mean, I can't tell you, there's been a few times throughout my career that I've literally been told, you ruined Christmas. Because like it was around the holidays and we couldn't my company couldn't deliver the product that they needed to in time for them to be able to do what they needed to do to get the money for the job to pay for gifts for their children.
Yeah.
You know,
but really, that's not you. I mean, you could look back at a year where they fiscally in a position at any other point that they could have set money aside, or you know, I mean, it's like blaming the last play of a football game for a loss.
Yeah.
You can do it all you want, and it sucks, as a Lions fan. It sucks. Or as a Michigan fan today, for those who may be listening.
Right.
I don't know if you saw that or not. Michigan went to punt and basically kicked the ball, or they fumbled it. Michigan State picked it up and walked in the end zone and won the game on the last play of the game.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that, but but the same concept. It's all, you can't blame one play of a sporting event for losing the game. There were other opportunities you didn't take. So with that, but in that moment, I'm sure it was difficult to not feel guilty.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, and because there's not much I could do, you know, and all I could do is apologize and deal with it, you know.
Right.
And then you hang up the phone.
Right, because you certainly can't go into what I just said and go, listen.
Yeah, exactly.
The rest of the year, every time you had free money, did you put it aside for Christmas gifts? You know, like, come on now.
So like, it's one of those moments that you have to, like, take that step back and you're like, okay, you know, put myself on hold for a second, regroup.
Right,
know?
Yeah, exactly.
Cry if I need to.
Sure.
Go back, you know, get myself together, and then, you know, go back and hit it hard.
Yeah.
And stuff. And I think that process is great. But we also have to make sure that, kind of to circle it back and maybe buttonhole it a touch, is not only are we grounding ourselves and taking those moments to touch base just to make sure that we're keeping ourselves as centered as we can and not get too carried away in one thing or another, but also lift our heads up and start really paying attention to everything around us, you know, because you got to, you know, catch your breath.
Yeah. Make
sure you're focused. Make sure once you get centered and once you get comfortable with the internal, then you kind of have to look out external and just say, oh, okay, what else is going on around me? And that's when you're going to start seeing some of those positive things that you can't when you're stuck inside. And I think that's where you start getting those insights. And by lifting your head and kind of looking around, that's when you'll start seeing things either mirrored back to you, these like moments of insight start popping up.
Yeah.
You know, whether you see them inside yourself or someone else sees them and delivers them to you, and all of that great stuff happens. But it all begins kind of like we were just saying. It begins with you taking a time out, taking those deep breaths, then lifting your head up and looking around you and absorbing what's going on in the world.
Yeah, and that's easily the hardest part of it, because again, you know, it's just like you know, you could tell somebody, hey, you know, look up, do this, and it's like, but at the same time, it's very difficult because that, you know, that's where the problem is, you know, if I could just think positively all the time, it'd be great. Although, I'll be honest. I've said, and I still kind of, and I kind of read something a couple days ago that kind of mirrored my thinking on this a little bit, which is I kind of wonder if people who are positive all the time are just as messed up as the people who think negative all the time.
I can agree with that.
I think other people's perspective or perception of them is the only difference. Mm-hmm. Because if you know somebody who's positive all the time, how many times are you annoyed to death? And I don't mean people like me where I'm more of a negative thinker, but just average type people find really, really positive people super annoying, and they don't want to be around them because everything's got to have a positive spin just as much as negative people. So I actually think they're two sides of the psychosis coin.
Yes. You gotta again, with that wonderful B word, you got to find the balance.
Yes. Now, again, people can dispute me on that all they'd like, and I think it might just prove my point more, but I don't, like you said, balance I think is that key. I don't think it's good to be either way, because really look at it from this point. Which is better, depression or mania?
Exactly.
I don't think either is good.
Nope. That's why I'm on medicine.
Right.
I get them both.
Right. So, yeah, that's my point.
My doctor agrees.
Balance.
Neither one's a good place to be.
Now, not everybody who's a positive thinker all the time has manic tendencies, but I'm just asking that question. That's kind of where I'm at. And there's a difference between people who are just positive and the ones that are, like, way over the top with it. Like, I'm talking to people that are the most, like, they could have the worst thing in the world happen to them, and they're just like, like, yippee-doo, and right back to, and you're like, how can you process that and move on so easily? That's not
normal. Yeah.
Not even normal, but that's not even like depressed people handle things about the same way because they're so numb. And you think you're kind of that way. You're so numb to it that you immediately deflect.
And that's why so many people, because I tend to go more towards mania than I go towards depression.
Right.
And most of my outward symptoms and things, especially outside of work, trend towards mania.
Yes.
So if someone's not used to seeing mania and is able to understand mania, it comes across as uber positive and energetic.
Spastic is usually like they're like, have you been around? Like she's just like this and this and this and this, and and you're that's kind of I think how most people process it is somebody who's like super like caffeinated or really like enthusiastic, and
I call it life on jazz hands.
It's pretty much that's about it. Yeah
because because it's like everything has jazz hands attached to it. It's like da 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 da.
Yeah. Yep. And that's why, like I said, it's so important. Like you, to get your balance, you needed medicine, and you're working with a therapist to line you back up, because that's not good. Like some of that, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with jazz handing once in a while and stuff, but that shouldn't be like your default setting. Just the same as woe is me and thumbs down all the time it shouldn't be your default setting. So
because you're right, because I was not processing anything.
Yeah, like I said, you deflect is what happens. Is you end up just deflecting everything.
Right. I was not processing anything. Nothing was really sticking.
Whereas the depressed side of that is you're just like, of course that happened.
Right. Exactly.
And you don't really process it either. You just like, of course that happened. And you just keep drifting as things hit you, and you're kind of like, whatever, and and it's the same wording. It's just inflection, because the positive person goes, whatever, and just shrugs it off and keeps going. You know what I mean? It's like I said, it's just the inflection. So, and there's elements of both that are good. You need to have
absolutely. You need
both.
to have ups and downs.
Yeah. So, but anyway, we should probably wrap up here.
Oh, I'm sure we're probably long.
But with a lot of times to get some of these. I can't say moment of clarity without thinking of a Jay-Z song. It's just, thank God for granting me this moment of clarity. It's just going through my head the whole episode. And anyway, they're so refreshing to get a lot of times, like you said earlier. Absolutely. Because, like me, I feel like my head has been just in quicksand for years.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever I hit one of these moments, like I said, it gives me that spark, and I'm kind of like, okay, like I can work with this. Like that's what happens. And unfortunately, they've been so far and few between that you can't. It's like trying to start a car by turning the key one time and then turning it right back off. That's basically what you're just like, oh, it didn't start. And you're like, you didn't even really give it a chance. And it's like, it's not going to start.
And this is quite the musical episode because Let the Sun Shine In just popped in my head. As well as the song from Cannibal the Musical. It's a Spadoinkle Day.
Oh, Spadoinkle, yeah.
Yep, Spadoinkle.
Yep.
And earlier, I was thinking about the...
I feel like I should put a playlist together for the show.
The show needs a playlist.
What a weird mix. Random musicals and pop music and hip-hop, and we're all over
Monty Python.
Right. Always look on the bright side of life. Yeah.
Always looks on the bright side of life.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy. We could even throw a little Hakuna Matata in there.
Oh, man. So, yeah.
Anyways, I guess we should wrap up, yeah.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I'll say on this is part of the thing with these moments is sometimes they happen and you overlook them. They're easy to overlook sometimes because, again, you're mired in... I'm just using... When I say mired in depression, I keep bringing that up because that's my experience. So whatever you might be dealing with might be different, or it might be the same, whichever, and so, but no matter what your situation is, you probably will run into moments where you've missed something, and it's been brought, like how many times, have you had something said to you, and you'll be like, oh, that's such a good point, and they'll be like, I've said that to you like 5 times. You just weren't, you weren't ready to hear it when you heard it before. And so when you finally hear it, it can really, you'll hear that. Someone will be like, hey, so-and-so said this to me. And they're like, I've been telling you that for years, and you're like, But like I said, you weren't, it's kind of like going, you hear somebody and they're like, hey, I should probably stop drinking. I think I have a problem. And you're like, I've been telling you that for years. And they're like, yeah, but I'm ready to now. It's like, hey, I'm ready to hear this now. So it's, like I said, so don't worry about it if someone's told you stuff. Don't beat yourself up or any of that kind of stuff. But when you catch these things, make sure it reminds. Like we always talk about claiming your wins on this show, no matter how small they are, no matter how big they are. Claim your wins. If it's a big one, stand and scream from a hell. If it's a small one, stand and scream from a rooftop. If that's what you feel.
Yourself.
Yes, because we're not set as a society to do that anymore without being called a narcissist.
Exactly.
So you have to, but you need to claim these wins. Like there's things that some people sometimes, even if it's that, the place you work for bought you coffee today and that's your deal. I mean, if that's the win for the day, that's the win for the day. I've seen people do that with donuts or whatever, where they're like, this day is awful, but at least they bought us donuts kind of a thing, so it's like, well, whatever it helps you get you through the day. But don't overlook the fact that most of these moments of clarity are wins. Like I said before, either they're a catalyst to change, or something to where it's a confirmation of change, whichever they are. Or there's other things it could be. But if it's one of those, those are still good things. That means you're moving. A lot of times with mental health issues, you feel like you're spinning your tires or sinking. So, and I know down is also a movement. Just as much as up or forward, I know down can be, but we're trying not to go that way.
That's not the ideal.
Right. But, like I said, if you feel you hit one of these moments of clarity, take it, look at it, and go, what is this telling me? Do I need to change, or does this mean, wow, I've grown or I've changed? And if you have changed, then go and celebrate it, especially if it's something good. If it's something bad, then, if you realize you've reverted, again, look at it. Don't look at it as going backwards. Look at it as it's the catalyst for your change.
Yep. I've recognized it and I can work on it again.
It's no different than if you're a person with anxiety and you can feel it coming on. You can, a lot of times, you can do things to help try to push it off. Sometimes it doesn't work, but that's what breathing and whatnot. If you wait until you're already in the middle of it, like I said earlier, much harder. But if you catch that aha moment, like, hey, you know what? This usually gives me really bad anxiety. I should be careful. Do breathing techniques before you go into that environment.
Yep.
I do it before I go to the therapist or the doctor of any kind because I know I'm going to have really high anxiety. So I go through breathing exercises on the way so that I can try to relax as much as possible before actually walking into what I perceive as a stressful environment. So there you go.
Wonderful.
Done. And
I'm going to leave you guys with one last point, and we've mentioned it before, and Henno has told me he really appreciates the term. We are positive narcissists.
Right?
So be a positive narcissist.
Yes.
Get out there in the world and be happy and proud of who you are and accept yourselves for who you are and celebrate the fact that you are who you are.
Right.
And celebrate those moments of clarity, regardless of what they are. Mm-hmm. Celebrate those moments of clarity because that means that, like you said, you're growing and you're moving. Yeah.
They're the moments of sun that break through the clouds. Mm-hmm. That's really, for a lot of people, that's what they are. Yep. That's what it is for me. You know? So use them as such. You know, take them in, soak it in, and enjoy the moment, which, again, one of the hardest things for me to do is being content in the moment. And I know it, and I've tried hard to work at it, and it's something I've not done well at, you know.
But you keep on trying.
But I keep trying, yeah.
That's important.
Yep.
So if you guys want to continue the conversation with me, you can reach out to me on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life. You can also reach out to the show at the Crazy Life Podcast at Outlook.com. Our website is the crazylifepodcast.weebly.com. And Brian, how can they reach out to you?
Well, first off, I want to say we're part of the Tangent Bound Network and the Wicked Radio Network. So we always encourage you to check them out. If you need links, I don't remember if there's links on our website to that or not, but if you want links to those, I can definitely hook you up with that. You know, there's a lot of great shows, and there are a lot of our friends are on those networks, including Angela's awesome podcast and like 15 that Henno does, and as well as Salty Language, which is my other podcast. You can also find the show on Twitter at the Crazy Life Pod. You can reach out to us through that also. You can find, if you want to just reach out to me, I'm at Stunami. I don't think I ever mentioned that on the show, do I? Or did I? And then I think I don't think I have the last couple, but whatever. You can also reach my other show at Salty_Language. If you want to find our pal Henno, who did the intro song, and we talk about all the time because we have huge crushes on him. And it looks like I may be meeting face-to-face in March.
So jealous. So jealous.
You can find him on Twitter at Ida Henno. And then again, I'll always put this in here, which is, you know, we're not doctors, therapists, trained professionals in any way. We're just two people who've been dealing with mental health issues for a while and just explaining our journeys and things we've kind of found that we thought might be helpful. If you need help, please go get help. Whether it's a therapist, your general practitioner, whatever it is you need, you know, please go seek it out. Again, I'll say if money is an issue, contact your Department of Human Services because a lot of areas have things to help people get mental health care for free or cheaper rates. So definitely don't let money... And there's also... I forgot to write it down. I think it's like BeyondBlue.com. I think that it's an Australian site that a woman started for mental health issues. And then there's, 7 Cups of Tea, I believe I mentioned before. You know, there's online communities for this as well. Or if you're on Reddit, go to I'm in r/depression. There's probably r/anxiety, r/bipolar. There's probably like any of it. So if you're familiar with Reddit, you can probably find a subreddit that works. And lastly, if you're in a really bad place and you're thinking about taking your own life, please don't, because that's a really bad idea. Please contact the suicide hotline number or someone in your support group, or if you just need to talk, one of us, or contact somebody. Please don't make that. Please don't go down that path.
Remember, if you stop to think about it, you can stop and not do it. You know, if you are contemplating it, that means you're not doing it.
Yeah.
You know, so don't discount those moments. Get help. You know, and
again, at that point, it can be a moment of clarity.
Yes,
and that can be your catalyst. Look at it as a catalyst for change.
Exactly.
And not in a negative way. Yeah.
You know, exactly. So with that, everybody have a wonderful evening, wonderful rest of the day, or wonderful morning, depending upon where you're at and what you're listening. Or I shouldn't say what, because you're listening to me. But
when
where
you're
at or when you're listening. Have a great week. Be positive narcissists. See you later.
Welcome to the Wicked Radio Network.
Hi, this is Mark. Congratulations. You have found this amazingly awesome show. Chances are you're listening to it right now on whether it's iTunes or Stitcher Radio or some other mobile app that allows you to stream this amazingly awesome show to your ear holes. And I can't stress how awesomely amazing this show really is. But did you know that you can also catch the latest episode of this show on the Tangibound Network? That's right. Go check out tangiboundnetwork.com. You can look them up and you can listen to it right there. It's even mobile friendly. What more could you ask for? Which means you can pull it up on your iPhone or your Android, even your Windows phone. Yeah, who has one of those? But still, point remains, you can do it. You can do it. Check it out, tangiboundnetwork.com. Listen to this show, the latest episode, every time. Check it out.